Every year there's hype around North Carolina, and they play good to start the year, and every year they fall apart before it's over. The last 2 weeks, are we going to get? I mean,
Hmm.
I'll let Georgia Tech slide. I know I got heat on here defending Miami, saying Georgia Tech was scrappy a couple weeks ago, but now that we've gotten a little bit away from it all, they had Louisville on the ropes and let Louisville come back and win that game. They beat Miami, they beat North Carolina. I think Georgia Tech isn't a terrible football team. However, they also lost to Virginia. And I know for a fact that is a terrible football team. And it happens every year. I feel like the the game, the tenacity is starting to slip from Mack Brown in a lot of ways that people also throw that accusation at Nick Saban, and I think somewhat fairly. The big difference is North Carolina isn't loaded at every position, 6 players deep with former 5-star recruits. So this stuff happens every year, and I think after the Georgia Tech loss and specifically the Virginia loss, it's time to start looking for Matt Brown to just ride back off into the sunset where he was before, live off that Vince Young national title, and just be remembered for his time at Texas.
Chase, you go for it, man.
Yeah, gentlemen, I wore the right shirts and I forgot we were talking about North Carolina. So disregard the shirt. I am a huge Tar Heel guy. I have been for the last few years. Um, but remembering when Mack Brown came to North Carolina, I was like, man, he's been out of the game for a while. Is he going to be able to adjust back in? And he sort of has. He's played well in the ACC, but I kind of got to agree with you, Quinn. I don't think this is him as a star. If Mack Brown didn't have that Texas tenure, if he was just a new coach in at North Carolina in the ACC, he'd be a mediocre coach. And that's what he has been in North Carolina. And you have to find somebody that, because you were so close to kind of not jumping, not hurdling, but almost on the same playing field as Dabo. Then now Dabo's kind of going down into the Brinks or Clemson per se. And now you've let Florida State jump you and let them become the perennial power in the ACC, it looks like, for this year. And so with North Carolina, you've had so many chances to at least be in the ACC championship game and to be competing and to be the representative of the ACC. And you just haven't made that hump like you're alluding to. They always kind of screw up at some point to a team they shouldn't. Virginia, no shot. Should not have had a chance to beat North Carolina. Georgia Tech, I don't really think they should have had a shot either, but they let them stick around. They lost that game too. So, Quinn, I'm actually going to have to agree with you here. Mack Brown's tenure in North Carolina has been very underwhelming for a big-name hire coach. So he's done great in recruiting. He just has not put the coaching efforts into some of these players that should have him at the top of the ACC with the way that they've been recruiting in the ACC. So they should be a top 2 team, and they're usually around the 4th spot, 5th spot most years. Freddie?
Well, really what concerns me is I still think that Mack Brown's a great coach. I still think he is a very good coach of the game of football, but where it starts to get a little questionable is in recruiting, right? Everybody knows that recruiting is how you run college football. I mean, the transfer portal's gone out of hand. However, you still build the backbone of the team through recruiting. You look at Deion. He, built Colorado up the transfer portal, but after they got beat by UCLA, he was trashing his offensive line. He said, well, they're more tenured and have more experience as a unit. You still have to have that in college football. You still have to have the togetherness and be a unit. You can't just build it like the NFL in, an off season with free agency and things like that. Even in the NFL, you have to do that. But they're currently 30th in recruiting for this upcoming year. I know it's early, but it's really not early. If you look at, the names that's above North Carolina, right? Nebraska, Michigan State, right? TCU, Auburn is 18th. South Carolina, like you even have competition on the East Coast here. And then the list just goes on and on. Even Miami in the ACC is, top 10. That to me is where Mack Brown is slipping away, is the recruiting. I don't necessarily think he's an attractive coach to play for in today's college football like he was, in the early 2000s. And I think that's where it is. I still think he's a great coach, but it's the recruiting aspect. And he even brings in coaches for his staff that have all this experience, NFL experience, head coaching experience. But you still have to be able to recruit the players in order to have a season like you guys are talking about. So, it's kind of like Dan Mullen. Like, he was a pretty decent coach, but he just didn't like recruiting. I'm not saying Mack Brown doesn't like recruiting, but he just couldn't get it done. And I think at the end of the day, in today's college football, you have to be able to recruit well, even if you're a great coach. So I think he definitely needs to move on or get with the times in recruiting.